Events take place in the dark on the estate of the Grand Duke of Credo. A young girl with long brown hair knocks on his lordship's office, but without waiting for an answer, she enters the room. The main character introduces herself to the man as Mirabelle, and that she is a private mercenary who is ready to fulfill any of his requests. The man tells the girl that her reputation precedes her, she has outstanding skills and zero tolerance for failure in completing tasks. The Duke adds that he is well aware of these facts, but the task he has prepared for her is not the one she usually undertakes. He hands the mercenary a photograph of a certain girl and says that his business is very important, so he is forced to ask her for help. Mirabelle saw a girl in the photo who looked remarkably like herself. His lordship, meanwhile, says that this is his daughter, Cornelia, and he wants his subordinate to go in search of her. The main character can barely contain her surprise that a man gave her such a task. She assumes that the Grand Duke is completely unaware. A woman named Cornelia is Mirabelle's mother. To the latter, her mother's name still seems familiar, even though the last time she heard it was many years ago. Cornelia ran away from home in pursuit of love, sacrificing the honor of her family. She wrote letters to her family many times, begging for forgiveness, but even after she fell ill and died, the family did not respond. The main character, angry that the Duke wants to find her after all this, says that he may never have wanted to look for her in the first place. The girl asks his lordship why he ignored her letters, to which he perplexedly says that he has not received a single letter from her. Mirabelle furiously says that Cornelia Credo is dead and that she wrote letters year after year asking for her forgiveness and died resentful of her father. The man was frightened by the mercenary's words. He wanted to ask who she was if she knew this, but a sudden incident prevented him from doing so. Suddenly, someone in a hat appeared in the room and expressed his joy that the three of them had finally met. The Duke asks Daniel how he ended up here, while Mirabelle does not understand who this stranger is. A man in a hat, lighting a cigar, suggests that the main character and His Highness were not properly introduced. Daniel declares to the Grand Duke, who is his brother, that Mirabelle is his granddaughter, and he, as a grandfather, should at least hug her for the sake of decency. While the Duke is at a loss for words in surprise, the mercenary calmly asks the man who has appeared who he is. He chuckles and says that he is her great-uncle. Daniel then wonders if they had time to discuss Cornelia's emotional letters. The main character, with a prominent emotion of anger on her face, asked how he knew about the letters. Suddenly, the great-uncle says that he was the one who intercepted them to make sure that his brother would not forgive Cornelia and bring her back. And this happened when a hole appeared in his plan. Mirabelle clenched her fist furiously, realizing that the Grand Duke had not ignored her mother's letters. Then she doesn't understand why Daniel did this. Taking out a dagger from her bosom, the girl understands that whatever the reason, she still will not forgive him. When suddenly the great-uncle says that he did this because he intends to end their lives today. The main character armed herself, but he says that it is useless, and she must accept her fate, and then her death will not be so painful. His lordship shouts to his granddaughter, calling her darling, that she does not need to fight with him. But Mirabelle, without retreating even a step from her great-uncle's people, firmly asks the Duke whether he really loved her mother. The Grand Duke says words that deeply touch the girl. He loved her all his life and swears that he never held a grudge against her. Then the heroine, coldly attacking the enemy, says that this is all she needed to know. But unfortunately, the opponents were outnumbered in strength, and Mirabelle realized that her end had come when she felt a strong wound in her stomach. The girl loses consciousness and falls to the floor. She dies, regretting that she was never able to avenge her mother. She feels strange. Her body becomes heavier, as if she is drowning deeper and deeper. The heroine has never been afraid of death, but wants to get another chance to avenge her mother. Suddenly, Mirabelle regains consciousness and sees a familiar face in front of her. It turned out to be her mother, who never stopped calling her. The main character ran into her mother's arms, as if not believing that it was really her in front of her. Surprised, Cornelia wonders if she had a nightmare. Mom asks her daughter if she's okay, to which she says yes, even though she can barely hold back her tears. Everything around Mirabelle seems very familiar, but she is sure that something is wrong. Belle looked at her hands, which, to her surprise, had become too small. Cornelia was puzzled by her daughter's unusual behavior, but she, being in a stupor, asked her to wait a little. The girl looked at her reflection in the mirror and was taken aback by the fact that she began to look several years younger. The main character asked her mother how old she was. This question made Cornelia doubt that everything was fine with her daughter. Mirabel hears shocking information from her mother. Yesterday, she turned only 9 years old. After a while, stuffing food into her mouth, the heroine digests everything that happened to her. She really died, but returned to childhood when her mother was still alive. Eating pieces of the dish, the girl cannot understand who or what brought her back in time, but she decides to use the chance to change the future. First, Mirabel needs to find a way to cure her mother, because there are only a couple of months left before she passes away. Chewing her food, she continued to think that in her previous life she had already seen her mother die, but she vowed not to let this happen again. Remembering the Grand Duke, the girl decides that even though she never had the chance, she still intends to take revenge. But the goal of her revenge changed from His Highness to Daniel, as she remembered the sincerity in her grandfather's eyes when he asked to find his daughter. Inspired, Mirabel decides to take the chance and change the future by curing her mother and achieving justice for her great-uncle. Bela should first meet the Grand Duke. She asks her mother if she is busy today, to which she says that she planned to stay at home. Then the heroine remembers that her mother seemed to tell her that she had a grandfather, to which Cornelia, shrugging her shoulders, says that this is so. The girl gently takes her mother's hand and asks if they can go visit him today. In response, Mirabel hears disappointing words. Cornelia doesn't know if they can do this, since he still hasn't forgiven her or accepted her into the family. When it got dark outside, the heroine got ready to set off alone. She has time before the caravan departs for the capital. She must find the right cart before the merchants arrive. For her, moving around secretly is not a problem, since in her past life, after the death of her mother, she had to survive on the streets, avoiding other vagabonds. Suddenly, Mirabel notices a cart with cargo in which she assumes she can hide. The girl deftly sneaked into it and hid her head with her cloak so that no one would notice her. The heroine was able to breathe a sigh of relief when the people checking the carts did not notice her. Suddenly, Mirabel felt as if something had touched her, after which she heard a strange sound. She thought it was an ordinary rat, but the girl could not contain her surprise when she looked out from under her cloak and saw that there was someone else in the cart besides her. Opposite her was a boy with white hair and blue eyes, who puzzledly asked the main character who she was. The girl stared in amazement at the unexpected guest. She assumed that he was most likely hiding, just like her. Mirabel then reminded the boy that he should introduce himself first before asking a stranger who he was. He, with a prominent blush on his cheeks, said that his name was Geoffrey Coleman. From her past life, Belle remembers that Geoffrey Coleman is the most famous mercenary on the continent. The guild he founded was said to be the most powerful, to match the level of the Order of Reina, the Imperial Order of Knighthood. Moreover, he was the strongest person, rightfully bearing the title King of Mercenaries. Geoffrey was not only strong, he was also famous for his reliability. He was also valued for caring for others. When the main character was a mercenary, he wanted her to join his guild. While Mirabel is overjoyed at knowing who he is, Geoffrey asks her to tell her his name since he already said his. The girl asked the boy for forgiveness and introduced herself as Mirabel Hale. The main character told the guy the name given to her by her parents. It is also her real name. Geoffrey Coleman complimented the girl, saying she had a wonderful name. Mirabel was surprised at this at first, but then replied that it was so. Geoffrey asked the girl why she was hiding here. She replied that she needed to get to the capital, although she secretly believed that she should have asked this question first to the future King of Mercenaries. The boy argued his reason like this: he is hiding from the guards who are pursuing him. The heroine was surprised that such a small boy was looking for a guard. The fugitive was slightly angry that Mirabel called him a little boy, although he looks older than her. The girl remembered that Geoffrey was 2 years older than her. She had already forgotten that she was not 26 years old, as she was before her rebirth. Belle said she took back her words and asked her friend for forgiveness. He said with a satisfied smile that he forgives her. Suddenly, Geoffrey decided to make a stunning confession. He had, in fact, committed murder. The boy says that a man named Gaiman from the Reshan estate. His parents took money but could not return it, so he beat them to death. The orphaned child told the guards about everything, but they accused his parents of not having borrowed the money in the first place. Then Gaiman came to Geoffrey when he found out that he dared to tell the guards about him. The man did not expect such payment for saving the child's life. The rich man grabbed the boy by the hair, telling him that for such behavior he should join his parents. Jeffrey says it was at that moment that he decided to take control of the situation. Mirabelle asked for forgiveness because it was probably unpleasant for him to talk about this topic. But he said that everything was fine because he had taken revenge on Gaiman. Then the guy asked his friend why she was going to the capital, and Belle replied that she needed to meet her mother's father. Jeffrey asked if her mother knew about this, to which she said that she did not even ask her permission. He was so surprised by this that he immediately ordered the heroine to go back, because she couldn't even imagine how worried her mother would be. The main character grinned because her interlocutor was absolutely right. She says her mom will definitely be worried. However, Mirabelle cannot afford to lose her mother a second time. She knows what she's doing because she can't just let her go. Jeffrey broke the silence between them by asking if this trip was that important to her. With a blinding smile, the girl replied that, of course, the trip to the capital was a very important task for her. The boy seemed charmed by her smile, and he replied that then there was nothing wrong with it. He hopes Belle arrives safe and sound. The heroine playfully patted Jeffrey on the head and thanked him for his excitement and understanding. He asked her to stop mocking his hair. While the guy was trying so hard to stop his girlfriend's touching that he turned as red as a tomato, his stomach decided to let out a hungry growl. Mirabelle asked if he was really hungry, to which Jeffrey said that the sound was not made by him, but by the squeaky wheels. The main character assumed that her friend was really very hungry, after which she remembered that she had taken some food with her for the road. She handed the boy the potatoes, but he was worried about her. Belle told him not to worry because she had brought 3 more of them with her. She orders her starving friend to eat. Looking at Jeffrey, the girl understands that if the future does not change, then in the future he will become a successful mercenary. The heroine believes that it will be better if he eats and sleeps now, because in the future he will be hungry a lot and not sleep at night. Suddenly, Jeffrey, looking at the food he was given, began to let tears fall from his eyes, after which he thanked his friend several times. After a while, the boy makes a promise to Bella that he will definitely repay her for these potatoes, but she said that everything is fine and he doesn't need to worry so much. But he said that this was not so because his parents had to borrow money from Gaiman because he always complained about hunger. Extending his hand to his friend, Jeffrey adds that he no longer wants to be in debt for food, even if it costs him his life. Taking Belle's hand, he says that he would have starved if she had not helped him. The girl decides to meet him halfway and expresses the hope that in the future he will repay her doubly. The boy smiled enthusiastically and said that he would try his best to do it. 3 days later, Jeffrey helps Mirabelle get off the carriage because they have already arrived at their destination. A couple, running through the city streets, rejoices that they have actually reached the capital and no longer have to run. Before going their separate ways, Jeffrey thanks Belle for everything and asks her to promise him that after meeting with her grandfather, she will return home because her mother is probably very worried. The main character again patted her friend on the head and called him a good boy, which again outraged the boy. Mirabelle says that this concerns him too, and asks him to take care of himself. She hopes that someday they will meet again. But before Belle had even taken 2 steps away from Jeffrey, the latter again shouted out his promise that he would definitely repay her for the potatoes. The heroine smiles and says that she understood everything. She reminds him about the rest of the potatoes that she shared with him, and he says that he won't forget. After saying goodbye to Jeffrey, Mirabelle thought about what she was firmly convinced of, no matter when or how, but one day she would meet him again. Approaching the guard who guards the gates of the palace, the girl understands that then she must definitely do what she came for. Addressing the guard, the main character says that she would like to ask for a meeting with the Grand Duke Credo, but the guard first decides to ask a question that in his opinion is meaningless, namely, from which noble house the young guest comes. She replies that she is not from anyone, but assures that she really needs to meet His Highness. The guard asks the little girl to forgive him and says that the Duke is now busy with state affairs, and she should have made an appointment in advance. Suddenly, the Grand Duke himself appeared from behind Mirabelle, and in a menacing tone asked if they had any problems. While the subordinate brought the Duke up to date, the main character immediately recognized who this stern voice belonged to. Hearing from the guard that he was just about to take the girl who had come to him back, the man praised the guard for his good job and hurried away. But suddenly, Mirabelle shouts out the name of the Grand Duke's daughter, Cornelia Credo, from which he instantly freezes. Belle, driven by the fact that her mother urgently needs help and does not have time to explain, says that her mother's name is Cornelia Credo and she needs help. His Highness stood intimidatingly in front of the young guest and asked if she knew whose name she had just spoken. The girl says that she knows that she is his missing daughter, and her mother told her this. She invites the Duke to meet with her himself if he does not believe. Even through the tears leaking out, she continues to say that her mother lives in the village of Delphia and they can get there in 3 days by cart. Belle begs the Grand Duke to hurry up because Mom is very sick right now and needs help urgently. Her tears fall to the ground. The heroine thought that she would not cry anymore, but the thought that she could lose her mother again stirred up these emotions in her. Thinking that she was ready to do anything, even kneel and beg. If only His Highness would help her, Mirabelle did not even notice how the Duke's hand gently touched her head. Sitting down on the child's lap, Mr. Crichton said that in this case he would not make her mother wait long. To find out if Mirabelle is telling the truth, the man asks the servant to change his schedule. He obeys the order and says that he will prepare the carriage. The Duke tells the girl, calling her his child, that she may be tired of traveling, so they will leave when they finish preparing. While the carriage is being prepared for the journey, the main character spends time in the company of the Grand Duke at a luxuriously laid table. The man admits that he may seem insincere because he doesn't even know where his daughter is now. But as a father, he tells his guests that all parents in the world want their children to live happily. He is sure that this is what her mother is praying for now. Mirabelle assumes that this man knows how she feels right now. She blames herself for leaving her sick mother and enjoys a rich dinner. However, looking at the Duke, the girl is sure that he still does not believe that her mother is Cornelia Credo. However, this is understandable. Many people have appeared who claim to know where the missing daughter of His Highness is, and each such false visit tore his father's heart into pieces, which is why now he is no longer able to trust people. But Belle is sure that his words that he always prays for her happiness were sincere, even though Cornelia abandoned him in the pursuit of love. The main character decides to eat because the Duke is right about something else. Her mother would not want to see her hungry and sick when she returns. Sometime later, the Duke and Mirabelle were heading into the prepared carriage. The man elegantly allowed the girl to get into the carriage first, holding his hand for her. She thanked his lordship. Having set off on her journey, Belle began to think that the Grand Duke Credo turned out to be much kinder than she had expected. He does not believe that Cornelia is her real mother, but still decides to go with her on a long journey to her village. The main character hated this man all her past life, but now that she knew the truth, her hatred disappeared, and she even felt sorry for the Duke. He missed his daughter all his life, and eventually died the day he learned of her death. An embarrassed smile appeared on the girl's face as she remembered that he used to call her his child. Mirabelle didn't feel so bad hearing that. When the sun set behind the horizon, and the Duke and his subordinates decided to stop and light a fire, it was heard from His Highness that he would be very happy if Belle turned out to be his granddaughter. The man says that he does not blame her, although he knows that she is lying to him. He knew about everything from the very beginning, but he felt her despair and desire to help her mother. The Grand Duke admits that the very name of his daughter greatly wounds his heart, and this wound has tormented him for many years. Desperately clutching his head, Mr. Cretan says that nothing would have happened if he had listened to her then. He has no one to blame but himself. The main character knew perfectly well what he meant, although the Duke did not give details. Mirabelle recalls that Cornelia Creto was engaged to the current emperor, James Bazet Castro. However, she fell in love with her personal guard, Guile Houston, and wished to annul her engagement to the emperor in order to marry Guile. But her wish was never approved, so in despair, the girl ran away with her lover. Unfortunately, Mirabelle's father died in a battle with a demon in the forest, so her mother raises her alone. The main character realizes that if it were not for Daniel's conspiracy, my mother's letters would have reached the hands of the Grand Duke. The girl put her hand on the man's hand to support him in such a difficult time for him. The Duke smiled softly. He thanked Belle and told her not to worry, because he would be happy to help her family, even if her mother did not turn out to be Cornelia. But Mirabelle is sure that he is mistaken, because she is the one he has been looking for all these years. He will finally be able to see his beloved daughter. This is what the heroine wanted to say, but could not. After 3 days, his lordship and the young lady arrived at her house. The man was surprised that she and her sick mother lived in such a destroyed house. While the Duke carefully entered the room, the girl shouted to her mother that she had already returned. Cornelia rushes into Mirabelle's arms. crying and looking very unwell. Trembling mother's hands stroke the girl. Mom says that she can't even imagine how worried she was about her. The mother asked her daughter if she had hurt herself anywhere, to which she said that she didn't have to worry and that everything was fine with her. Cornelia is very happy about this and says that her health is the most important thing. At this time, the Duke trembled in surprise and dropped his cane when he recognized in the girl his long-vanished, beloved daughter. And Cornelia covered her mouth in amazement when she recognized a familiar face in the man. The girl affectionately put her father's hand on her cheek and said that she was truly his daughter. The man's eyes filled with tears and he hugged Cornelia, who did not stop asking him for forgiveness. When the family sat down at the table, the Grand Duke irritably asked his daughter why she was alone in the house, alluding to her husband. But the main character's mother notifies her father that her beloved Giel died 4 years ago while protecting the village. Grandfather put his hand on his forehead and sighed heavily, and the girl asked her dad to forgive her. But he says that she should not apologize, because she suffered alone for a very long time in such a terrible place. Then Mr. Credo turns to his granddaughter and asks her if it is true that his daughter is very sick. Cornelia's face instantly darkened and the sparkles from her eyes went out. She said it was true. The Duke sadly says that in this case she should have come to him right away. He is at a loss as to why she didn't do it. Suddenly, Mirabelle stands up for her mother, saying that she wanted him to forgive her, so she wrote many letters, but did not receive an answer, which is why she decided that her father was still offended by her. The man says in surprise that he did not receive any letters, which was obvious to the main character, because Daniel took care of it. The Grand Duke suggests first returning to the estate to calmly discuss all other issues there. He adds that they should hurry, as his daughter needs to be cured as soon as possible. Cornelia thanked her father and asked her to wait a little so that she could pack her things. The Duke asked her not to strain too much. After some time, Lady Creighton asked her daughter to come to her. The girl thanked Mirabelle for bringing her grandfather to her because she was very worried about her mother. Her mother calls Belle a very brave girl. Patting the child on the head, Cornelia asks her not to do anything so dangerous next time. Mom says that she is the one who should take care of her, and nothing is more important to her than her safety, to which the girl happily agreed. As the family loaded things into the carriage, the Duke asked to give the box to the footman, which was carried by his daughter. But Cornelia said that these were Giles' things, and she wanted to carry them herself. They weren't that heavy anyway. The father allowed his daughter to carry the box herself, for which she thanked him. The man said that their carriage was parked at the entrance to the village. The main character thought that her mother and grandfather needed to be left alone, so she managed to move away, but her mother noticed her in time. Cornelia put Mirabelle and her father in an awkward stupor. She asked Belle to take her grandfather's hand, since her hands were busy. The girl immediately guessed that her mother wanted her to get closer to the Grand Duke. The heroine believes that it will not be so difficult. Belle asked the Duke, calling him His Serene Highness, to join hands, to which he joyfully gave his consent. Cornelia was surprised and upset that the girl for her daughter was still his lordship. Having sat down in the carriage, Mr. Crichton thanked Mirabelle for everything, because if it were not for her, he would never have found his daughter. But the girl says that she does not deserve his gratitude, because if he himself did not trust her, then nothing would have happened. The main character realizes that from the very beginning, Grand Duke Credo did not believe that her mother would really be Cornelia Credo. In Mirabelle's opinion, it was his kindness to the helpless peasant child that united them all. This man kept kindness in his heart even after losing his own daughter. The heroine is sure that he deserves more. For the next 3 days in the carriage, father and daughter told each other stories about what had happened to them over all these years. Mom talked about how she loved her father, about why she ran away, and about how she blamed herself. The Duke said that he realized a lot. Selfishness and greed drove his decisions, which he regrets. Surprisingly, their meeting was quite pleasant. After 3 days, the family arrived at the large, luxurious palace of the Crichtons, in which from now on they will live. Coming out of the carriage, Belle thought that she had to cure her mother and change the future. The Duke will take care of Mom, and she needs to deal with the rest. Suddenly, a certain man, who was sweating with excitement, began asking the Duke whether it was true that he had finally found Cornelia. This turns out to be a handsome young man who, when he saw the daughter of the Grand Duke, was very happy. He began bombarding the main character's mother with questions about where she had been all this time and why she hadn't contacted him. She asks him for forgiveness with a smile. At one point, the man noticed a little girl standing next to him. Cornelia introduced Mirabelle as her and Guille's daughter. Mom asked Belle to introduce herself properly because the man was her uncle named Brian. The heroine fulfilled her mother's request. Brian is amazed at his niece's similarity to his sister, then says he's glad to meet her. He allows Mirabelle to simply call him uncle. The man stroked the girl's head, causing her to have a scarlet blush on her cheeks. The uncle says that he also actually has a son about the same age as the main character. At that moment, another family member approached them. It turned out to be Elliot, a boy with brown hair and brown eyes. He cordially introduced himself at his father's request. Brian introduced his son to his cousin Mirabelle and asked him to be polite to her. Elliot greeted the girl and said that he was glad to meet her. Belle shook the boy's hand and said that she was also glad to meet him. Grand Duke Credo suggests that everyone go inside because Cornelia and his granddaughter must be tired. Grandfather asks Belle to stay in her mother's room today, as it takes more time to prepare her room. The girl says she doesn't mind. Cornelia asks her daughter if she is tired, to which she says that she is fine, and in any case they can rest a little. The girl agrees with Mirabelle's words and offers to go into the palace so that she can sing her a lullaby. The main character believes that she was mistaken about the House of Creighton, and the people here are much kinder than she expected. After some time, a doctor examining Cornelia using magic says that she will need therapy for 3 months. The Grand Duke summoned the high priest from Duana's temple to treat the illness of the heroine's mother. The goddess Duana is the mother of all gods, and the priests who serve her are endowed with the ability to heal people. But even with an experienced high priest, treating the mother would take 3 months. But Mirabelle began to worry about a thought that would not stop tormenting her: whether her mother would be able to fully recover. This concerns not only her. Mr. Crichton asked the priest if it would be possible to completely cure his daughter in 3 months. He says that he can't even doubt it. 3 months is enough, but the priest says that he would also like to examine Mirabelle. The priest explains that Cornelia's disease is called Hazel and is inherited. The main character recalls that she was not sick with anything. The man asked the girl to give him her hand, which she did, after which the priest used magic. Mirabelle was greatly puzzled by the doctor's sudden surprise and words that this was impossible. To everyone's surprise, the priest says that the main character has no signs of illness. On the contrary, according to the man, she is endowed with the ability to use her magical powers. The doctor asks the girl if she has ever wanted to visit the temple, since she can use the power sent to her by God. Mirabelle suspects that something changed in her when she traveled to the past, because she had never experienced anything like this before. The main character asks the priest if this means that she, like him, can heal people and can even cure Mother. He says that her mother's disease is quite rare and difficult to treat, but he is confident that one day she will be able to cure it. Mirabelle realizes that if only she had this ability earlier, she would never have allowed her mother to die so helplessly. Clenching her fist to her chest, she swears to herself that this time she won't let her mother die. Belle promises His Holiness to visit him soon, which he is very happy about, and says that he will be waiting for her in the temple. Sitting at the dining room table, the Duke expresses his joy that his daughter's illness was curable. He is supported by Brian, who was already preparing for the worst when the family took a long time to go to breakfast. His Highness says that this is all thanks to his granddaughter, but she seems not to pay any attention to her grandfather's words. The girl is more worried about Elliot, who has been staring at her continuously for a long time. The next moment, Mirabelle calls out to her uncle and asks how she slept last night. She says that she felt very comfortable. This consoles the man. He asks his niece to tell him that she may not like it. Belle agrees with him smilingly, but in fact, the expression on Brian's face makes her feel uncomfortable. Brian, known to everyone as the Iron Duke, is callous and indifferent, but what was worse was what she saw during the expedition to exterminate demons. Mirabelle still remembers his eyes, full of cruelty, when he dealt with all the demons. But now, looking at the heroine's face, Brian says that she looks like his sister, and that the girl is very smart if she herself got to the Crichton Palace. The uncle praises the girl like a chatty old woman. The man says that he would gladly show off such a niece to the whole world. But suddenly his mood changes to something gloomy, after which he tearfully asks Mirabelle if it's hard for her to communicate with him. She gives an ambiguous answer, and Brian says that this is not surprising, because she did not even know that she had an uncle. He suggests that everything is too unexpected and frightening for Belle now. The man admits that all the children in the area run away in fear when they see him. He tries his best to be friendlier, but it doesn't work. Mirabelle says that there is nothing wrong with this, although in fact she can already imagine how the neighbor's children screamed in fear. The heroine says that it's all about his emotions, which need to be worked on. Cornelia supports her daughter by saying that she always told her brother this. The Grand Duke asks his son to stop because his granddaughter has suffered enough, although Belle believes that her uncle is not to blame for anything. And Elliot tells Dad that because of his gloomy expression, Mirabelle lost her appetite, which is actually true. The main character declares that everything is fine with her. She's just trying to get comfortable in a new place and will get used to it over time. Brian thanked his niece for taking his side. He advises her to immediately contact him if someone threatens her. The man's face darkened again. He promises to kill anyone who dares to offend Belle. Elliot reminds Dad again that you can't comfort someone with that face. Brian reminds his son that he is waiting for him at practice today. He was surprised because he thought that she was not there today. His dad says he was wrong about that. This dialogue made the main character laugh until she cried. Although she is not yet accustomed to the surroundings here, the people here seem kind and caring to her. Calling his granddaughter beloved, which was not entirely customary for her, the Duke asked her to tell her what she wanted. The grandfather says that he never had the opportunity to pamper his beloved granddaughter. He missed out on a lot, so he doesn't know where to start. He asks the girl to tell her what she dreams of. Nothing comes to Mirabelle's mind yet. Her mother's illness will soon pass, but it's too early to think about Daniel. But suddenly she remembers her friend Jeffrey and thinks it would be great if she could help him with something. The heroine knows that he will become the king of mercenaries on his own, but she does not want him to live all this in this life. Belle believes that if she helps him now, then perhaps he will return the favor in the future. The Duke called out to his granddaughter, who was deep in thought about something. She apologized and said that there was one boy whom she met on the way to the palace. Mirabelle says that although they didn't talk for long, they became closer thanks to the conversation. The main character asked to help this boy because it looks like he is being stalked. The grandfather, with a sly smile, asks the girl to tell him his name or other signs that will help find him. Belle says his name is Jeffrey Coleman and is from Sharon. He is 2 years older than her, has silver hair and blue eyes. Grand Duke Credo was surprised at how young this boy was. The man promises to take care of this, and if everything goes smoothly, they will stop looking for him. Mirabelle laughed enthusiastically and thanked her grandfather. She is glad that she can help Jeffrey in some way. The Duke tells Cornelia that they received a letter from the Emperor late last night. The father has no idea how His Majesty knew about the arrival of his daughter, but the latter asks her to visit him as soon as possible. The main character's mother immediately remembered the image of the Emperor and asked her dad if he meant James Bazet Castro. The girl gives her consent to the meeting because, according to her, James suffered terrible humiliation because of her, and she could not predict this. Cornelia says that she would like to visit the Emperor tomorrow, to which the Grand Duke promises to inform the Imperial Palace about her arrival. Then Lady Creighton once again asks for forgiveness to her brother and father for all the suffering she caused them. But the Duke says that there is absolutely no need for an apology, because they are immensely glad that she returned home safe and sound. Brian supports his father's words and says that if she wants, he will accompany her during her visit to the Emperor. Cornelia thanks her brother for his concern, but refuses his offer because she believes that this should only be between her and the Emperor. While snacking on a cake, the main character caught herself thinking that she was very pleased to see her mother smile again. Mirabelle is then surprised by the wonderful taste of the tart, which is completely different from the ones she ate in her previous life. Cornelia asked her daughter if she liked the egg tart she was eating, and she said yes. This caused a mixed reaction from the Grand Duke. The grandfather waved his hand and ordered the servant to bring more egg tarts, which his granddaughter liked. The subordinate immediately began to carry out the order. Before the main character had time to utter 2 words, she was served 3 additional servings of egg tartlets of different variations. Mirabelle wanted to tell the Duke that he shouldn't have done this, but he asked her to eat and enjoy. The girl was very surprised by the words of Mr. Credo. He promises to give her everything she wants. Belle happily takes a bite of her favorite sweet, never ceasing to admire how delicious it is. Sometime after breakfast, the main character and her mother look at the servants, who promise to prepare a dress especially for her. Sitting down in an embrace with her mother on the bed, Mirabelle begins to realize that her dream is becoming a reality. Her mother is not dead. Belle believes that if she had gone back even further into the past, she might have been able to save her father. Cornelia tells her daughter that she is going to meet the Emperor today and asks if she would like to come with her. She says that she will gladly join her. Mom says that she is actually a little scared before the meeting, to which Belle hugs her as a sign of support and says that she will always be with her. The girl thanks her daughter and asks her forgiveness for not being able to do more for her. She promises to take care of herself from now on. Since Mirabelle was too young to do anything when her father died, she vows to herself to do everything to protect her mother. Soon mother and daughter came to meet the Emperor in his rich mansion. Immediately outside the carriage they are met by a man named Tennervan. Cornelia says she's glad to see him again. Tennervan kisses the lady's hand and asks how she is doing. The girl says that her life is good. She is happy that he was promoted in her absence. The man says that it is. He is now the commander of the royal guard. He invites the ladies to go inside because the Emperor is just expecting them. When Cornelia and Mirabelle were at the entrance to the office, a subordinate informed the Emperor of their arrival. His Majesty ordered them in through the door. Before the doors of the room opened, the main character doubted that everything was okay with her mother. Mother and daughter entered the imperial mansions and respectfully greeted the lord of the lands. But the Emperor suddenly tells Belle's mother that she is late. He was waiting for her in Vanessa's garden all the time, and is waiting for her there now. James asked the girl why she could not visit him even once. Mirabelle guessed that this was the same Emperor who had been in love with her mother in the past. Cornelia says that if she had met him in Vanessa's garden, she would never have met Guile. The girl does not regret her decision, but she repents to the Emperor for the pain she caused. Looking at the man's trembling hand, Mirabelle can confidently assume that James really was in love with her. As soon as His Majesty asked his former lover if it was her daughter with Guile next to her, the heroine immediately bowed in greeting. The Emperor said that it was not advisable for children to listen to their conversation, after which Cornelia asked her daughter to play outside until she returned soon. Mirabelle agreed and quickly found herself outside. She thought that James seemed to value her mother and he would not do anything bad to her. Suddenly, a certain dark-haired boy bumps into the main character, who swears that she seemed to appear out of nowhere. While the maid is calming the boy down, the girl is surprised by his hair color. The young man who suddenly appeared from out of nowhere turned out to be the son of His Majesty, Prince Adrian Castro. Adrian asks the main character who she is and says that she should be glad that he was not hurt in any way, although his clothes are now dirty. She greets him in front of him, wondering in her thoughts how cute the boy is and how similar he is to his father, but at the same time has a spoiled character. The maid tells the prince that the young lady in front of him is the granddaughter of the Grand Duke Credo. Adrian was puzzled by the fact that House Creighton had another child besides Elliot. Just as she is about to leave, Mirabelle asks the boy for forgiveness for bumping into him. She's very relieved that he wasn't hurt, but Adrian ordered her not to leave and asked who was in that room with his dad now. Belle clarified what problems he had. The prince says that in this reception room there is now a man who made his mother, the Empress, cry, and he wants to take revenge for her. The main character unexpectedly caught herself thinking that she perfectly understands what this child is feeling now. The Emperor and his old love are right now outside the doors of the reception room. It seemed that James had not yet fully recovered from his past feelings, which for the Empress, of course, was a complete nightmare. Belle realizes that Adrian came running here as soon as he saw his mother crying. She understands his feelings and considers him a good son, but too cocky. The girl says that her mother is in the room with the Emperor. Mirabelle asks the prince not to worry because her mother did not want to offend the Empress. Suddenly, the children's dialogue is interrupted by a woman's voice, which loudly calls out to Adrian. Both turn their heads towards the sound. The Empress with blonde hair and in an expensive, beautiful dress appeared in front of them. She tells the prince that she hoped not to find him here. Her Highness asks her son not to make things difficult for his father as it would put him in an awkward position, but he says it was wrong to make her cry. The Empress pats Adrian on the head and says that she appreciates his feelings, but what he is about to do is not necessary. The girl was about to confess what really upset her, but she noticed another child next to the boy. Mirabelle introduces herself. Then Her Majesty asked the girl if she was waiting for the conversation to end. She invites her to come with her and wait over a cup of tea. The main character assumes that she is like an eyesore for her, but still extends her hand to the girl and agrees with her proposal. The Empress says that Mirabelle has her mother's appetite, as she also loved to eat a lot of sweets. The girl thanks the lady for the treats. While drinking tea, Belle thinks that Adrian is the same as Elliot, but a little different. She is embarrassed that the prince continues to stare at her. Suddenly, the Empress spoke gloomily about how she and Cornelia had been good friends in the past, but she can't say for sure whether she still considers her friend. In her thoughts, Mirabelle was sure that her mother still considered her a friend, because if she had only seen her, she would have rushed into her arms. Suddenly, from behind the Empress, Cornelia called out her daughter's name in surprise, after which Her Majesty called out to her herself. The heroine's mother politely greeted the ruler's wife and asked how she was doing, but she silently rose to her. The Empress, meanwhile, could not find words, but her gloomy, embittered face said everything for her. She screams that because of Cornelia, 8 years of her life were a living hell because James was waiting for her all the time, and he was everything to her. The lady covered her face with her hands, saying that on top of everything, her beloved friend simply disappeared without sending a single letter about whether she was alive or not. She admits that this offended and upset her. Adrian, who was watching them, wanted to stand up for his mother out of habit, but Mirabelle stopped him with a smile, hinting not to interfere. The main character understands that all this anger and sadness are signs that Her Majesty was truly bored and worried. The Empress hugs Cornelia, saying that she feels happy to see that her friend is alive and well. She is glad that Lady Creighton has returned. Mirabelle is consoled by the fact that relief has come for both of them. She thanks God that everything went smoothly. Sitting down at the table, the blonde was surprised by how rough her friend's hands were, to which she said that she had to take on all the manual labor herself. The Empress is interested in the Grand Duke. Why didn't he help her if he loves her so much? Cornelia says that she wrote to him several times, but none of the letters arrived, so she thought that her father was still judging her. Then the girl asks Lady Creighton why she didn't write her a single letter, because they are friends. She replies that it would be arrogant of her, but the Empress says that she should have thought more about her. After listening to the girls' conversations, the main character understood why her mother and Her Majesty were such good friends. Empress Mariana secretly loved the Emperor for a long time, but the day she decided to give him up, Belly's mother ran away with guile. Thus, Cornelia left the Emperor and annulled her engagement. Marianne managed to take her place and become engaged to the Emperor, but he continued to wait for Lady Credo. Because of this, he married the Empress only 2 years after the engagement. Her love for Emperor Castro, her care for her mother Mirabelle, and the resentment she felt became a mixture of terrible events for her. This lasted until Prince Adrian was born. Although this boy never stopped staring at the main character, the girl considers him a good son. Belle asked the boy why she was looking at her like that, to which he asked if she shouldn't like cookies. Mirabelle said she liked the cookies, but some were too sweet for her. The prince was surprised that someone might not like sweets. The girl wanted to say that this did not mean that she was against sweets, but she quickly changed her mind and fell silent. When the time came to say goodbye, Marianne invited her friend for tea at any time, and she asked her not to be offended if she came too often. The Empress told Mirabelle that she hoped to see her again soon. The girl thanked her and admitted that she was pleased to meet her. Belle turned her attention to the prince, who was excitedly showing her a certain gesture. But Cornelia asked her daughter to quickly go to the carriage, and Adrian was left without reciprocal attention from her friend. Peering at the road through the carriage window, the main character drew conclusions. Mother's health was improving, and the meeting with the Emperor went well. Now she must collect evidence on Daniel. The girl's mother asked what she was thinking about so much. She said that she wanted to ask her something. When her daughter asked if there was anyone in the family of Duke Credo whom she had not yet met, Cornelia replied that there was, and this person is her cousin and also the younger brother of the Grand Duke, Daniel Credo. Mirabelle immediately guessed that, judging by her mother's face, she didn't even suspect Daniel of intercepting the letters. Belle asked herself the most difficult question: how to prove her uncle's guilt. Suddenly, Cornelia turned to the main character with one request. She happily asked what she needed. It turned out that Mom wants Mirabelle to call the Grand Duke simply Grandfather. The girl was slightly surprised by such a request. Still, Belle agrees that Duke Creighton is her grandfather, so she goes to meet her mother, which makes her very happy. When mother and daughter arrived at their home palace, the Duke met them and asked how the meeting with the Emperor went. Mr. Credo asks how His Majesty is doing and what they talked about. Cornelia says that everything went well. They talked about what happened in the past, and how they felt then. The Grand Duke was glad that he could finally relax. The heroine's mother reminds her father that Uncle Daniel promised to return last year, and until then they can rest a little, to which he agrees. Mirabelle wanted to say something to Mr. Credo, accidentally almost calling him Grand Duke as usual. But she corrected herself, saying that she wanted to talk to her grandfather, so she asked her mother to go upstairs without her. The delighted man promises not to detain his granddaughter for long and will soon send her to her mother. He is very interested to know what business Belle has. After mother and daughter said goodbye, grandfather and Mirabelle retired to the room where the former treated her to tea. Looking around the room, the main character remembers that this is the same reception room in which she died in a past life. Belle asked her grandfather if he remembered what she said about the letters that his mother wrote to him. The Grand Duke says that he remembers these letters in which Cornelia wrote about her apologies. The girl explains that her mother sent at least 2 letters weekly, and some of them she sent through the Merchant Guild and others through mercenaries. About 20 pieces come out per year. She hints that it is strange that he has not received a single letter, but thinks that grandfather is unlikely to believe it if she tells the whole truth about Daniel. The heroine realizes that all she needs now is to arouse suspicion. She carefully thinks through what she will say to the Duke. She shares with her grandfather her worries that these letters could have been lost because someone strongly dislikes her and her mother. In fact, Mirabelle does not feel fear for her great-uncle, but rather disgust. Because of Daniel Credo, her mother in a past life died of a completely curable disease. The girl had to bury her in the ground with her own hands, and this was the most painful thing for her. She had to keep her beloved mother buried under the cold, dark mud, but Belle promises herself that it won't happen again. The Grand Duke agrees that the situation is rather strange, but he believes that there is nothing to worry about, because no one in the mansion wishes them harm. Realizing that there is no point in telling stories from the future, Mirabelle asks her grandfather to sort things out. She thanks the Duke for listening to her. Mr. Creighton says that he is only happy about this. He asks his granddaughter to return to her mother and rest. Walking along the corridor, the heroine thinks that she has nowhere to rush yet because only a day has passed since they moved into the mansion. She assumes that Brian is also unaware of Daniel, but Mirabelle finds it difficult to imagine her uncle as an accomplice of the enemy. He is the rich heir of the House of Creton, and there is no point in him siding with Daniel. In addition, it seems to the girl that he is on fairly good terms with the Grand Duke. Belle, following logic, assumes that her great-uncle acted secretly, so no one from the family could notice his actions. In her opinion, it is not so difficult for him to carry out his plans, since he spends most of his time on the front line. Still, Mirabelle repeats to herself that these are just her guesses. She noticed the palace's subordinates who had gathered to greet their guest. But suddenly something happened that the girl did not expect. The servants, bowing their heads, greet her sworn enemy, Lord Credo. As soon as the main character noticed Daniel, the same anger with which she lived her past life instantly flared up in her. The man noticed the main character on the balcony and told his subordinate that he did not recognize this girl. The servant informed my lord that this was Lady Cornelia's daughter. Daniel is surprised by this because he didn't know his brother's daughter had a child. Mirabelle realizes that he is lying because he knew about it from the letters. The girl is embittered because every breath her great-uncle takes is filled with lies. The man cheerfully greets the heroine and says that he is his grandfather's brother, after which he asks the little girl to come closer so that he can get a better look at her. But Mirabelle, without saying a word, remained standing at a distance, looking at him warily. Daniel thought that the girl was too shy, but said that she would get used to it over time. The servant supports him, since only 1 day has passed since she appeared in the palace. Milord introduces himself again as Belle's grandfather's younger brother, and then asks her to tell her name. But she is silent again. The heroine thought that he was behaving like any kind-hearted old man, and she would have fallen for it if not for the rebirth. She realizes that Daniel disarms people with his charm, and most likely this is why Duke Credo never suspected him. Mirabelle decides to pretend to be an innocent child, and with some embarrassment asks the man if he is really her grandfather's brother, which he confirmed. The servant repeats to the little lady that the lord is indeed her great-uncle, so there is no need to be afraid of him. The girl said her name was Mirabelle. Daniel said that he was pleased to meet her, after which he reached out to her with his hand. The main character herself was surprised by what she did. The thought that this man could touch her made her instinctively retreat. The Lord laughed timidly and said that they should not rush to get acquainted yet, although now they would see each other much more often. Daniel said that he urgently needed to see her grandfather, so he asked if she knew where he was. She replied that she knew. Then the man asked the little girl to be kind and take him to him, because this is very important for him. The subordinate tells Mirabelle that in this way the Lord is trying to get to know her better, so he advises her to fulfill his request. The girl clenched her hands nervously. She doesn't know what Daniel is up to. She doesn't want to do anything for him, but she can't refuse him without causing tension. Without a smile on her face, Belle agrees to the man's request and orders him to follow her. Walking down the corridor, Daniel says that Mirabelle is different from Cornelia. She was sociable as a child. He wonders if the girl is getting used to the new environment, to which the servant said that she needs time. The Lord believes that Cornelia is lost because she lived poorly all her life and ended up in a mansion. In his opinion, she needs several months to get used to it. Suddenly, Daniel says that Mirabelle has a pleasant face, and with proper care, she will have many admirers in the future. The man is glad that the baby's appearance will not interfere with her search for a husband. The main character is disgusted to hear such conversations. It is difficult for her to hear such outrageous things behind her back, but she needs to be calm as she must find the traitor and win the family's trust. She will reveal Daniel's plans, take revenge, and make him pay for everything. She has enough time, so for now she needs to look for hints in his words. Daniel, meanwhile, remembers that the son of the Marquis Bayev is now about 16 years old and says that a marriage with their house would strengthen the position of the House of Credo among the nobility. The servant supports the Lord, saying that Grace's house would welcome Belle with open arms for her beauty. But therefore, there are many bad rumors about them. The men continued to list candidates for matchmaking, which gave Mirabelle a feeling of disgust that she could not shake. The heroine finds it disgusting how Danielle considers potential suitors for a 9-year-old girl based on status and wealth. She realizes that she needs to restrain herself in order to gain her grandfather's trust. Milord continues to select candidates for her, which angers Belle even more. Suddenly, someone appeared on the way of the men and the girl, who was outraged by the words of his great-uncle. It turned out to be Elliot, who says that Mirabelle is only 9 years old, and as far as he remembers, Duke George, with whose heir Daniel thought to set the girl up, has no children. The boy asks the man whether he really considers Duke Giorgio as a potential groom for the main character. The young master promises to give his grandfather a cure for dementia because he seems to have forgotten how old this man he calls the groom is. Daniel insists that he meant that Duke Giorgio could help in finding a suitable partner. It pains him to hear how his words have been twisted. Elliot asks if the Lord would mind if he tells his father and the Duke everything, to which the man agrees. Belle is shocked that they stood up for her. The boy then asked why Mirabelle was acting as his guide, to which the heroine said that she had been asked to show the way to her grandfather. The young man says that the only one who needs to be accompanied is Mirabelle. He then tells his friend that her room is ready and he will take her there. Elliot takes the girl with him, saying that the servant Barden himself can take my lord to his grandfather. The main character noticed that Daniel did not have the look of a loving uncle at all. This is the languid look of a snake that has missed its prey. The young master and Mirabelle arrived at their destination, where the boy presented the heroine with her new, luxuriously decorated room. Harriet asked if she liked her apartment, to which the girl, surprised at how soft the bed was, said that she did. The main character thought that it was difficult for her to accept everything as a new reality, but she liked having such a beautiful and cozy bed. She also likes the fact that she now has someone who can stand up for her. Belle thinks it's cute, even though it makes her a little embarrassed. Suddenly the boy hesitated before saying something. He warned that this was only his opinion, but he urged his friend to stay away from her great-uncle. The young man sat down on the bed next to Mirabelle and asked her to at least avoid dialogue with Daniel alone, because the servants would not be able to help her. The boy then apologized for possibly scaring her, but she said that she really felt uncomfortable with him and was glad he stood up for her. Belle cannot believe that Elliot also became a victim of Daniel, because he is the legitimate grandson of the Grand Duke and the son of Brian. She can hardly believe that they would treat him badly. Since she is a child, she decides to ask her friend directly whether the Lord was mocking him. The young heir nervously scratched his cheek and replied that he and she were in the same boat. Mirabelle asked if he meant marriage, to which he said that that's exactly what it was. Brian's son warily says that Uncle Daniel is so obsessed with this issue that he seems to be trying to get rid of them all. Elliot asked his friend if it was true that she was only 9 years old, To which the heroine waved her arms to the sides and smiled. Suddenly Mirabelle thought that children could really be offended by such things, but everything was clear to her because she was an adult in a child's body. But if she were an ordinary child, she would not have understood half of what marriages, engagements, and wealth Daniel was talking about. The girl believes that Elliot seems more mature to her than other children his age. Sometimes he is sharper than some adults. While the boy, blushing on his face, was talking about how the feelings of the newlyweds should be taken into account when concluding a marriage, Belle was struck by an unexpected guess. The main character asked her friend if there was a girl he liked. Although the blush on the young master's cheeks became even brighter, he admitted that he had romantic feelings for a certain lady. Mirabelle happily said that she had assumed as much, then asked if she could inquire who the girl was. Elliot, with a pleasant smile on his face, says that his lover's name is Zenial Saffron. Suddenly, the young man jumps out of bed and excitedly says that he has to go anyway. He, wishing Mirabelle to take care of himself, flies out of the room and slams the doors behind him. Belle was surprised by this, but thought it was very nice of him. The girl is sincerely happy for her friend, because in a past life, she heard that the lord of the house, Crichton, and Lady Saffron got married. Then she remembered that as soon as she appeared at the Crichton estate, she did not leave the feeling of awkwardness, but thanks to Elliot, she felt much better. After this, the heroine moves on to discuss a more pressing problem. Someone other than Daniel intercepted her mother's letters, and did it without even consulting the Duke. This means that the person who gave the order is quite influential. All these details point to one person, Steward Barden, who was expecting Daniel today. Judging by the way they talked to each other, it seemed that they knew each other, but this evidence is not enough, and so far the steward seems to be an ordinary worker. Belle suggests that this servant is not the only one in cahoots with Daniel. The main character sets herself the goal of getting to know all the staff. To some extent, Mirabelle can understand why he did this with the letters. In the past, her mother broke off her engagement to the Emperor. This caused a rift between Credo and the royal family. Even if Daniel becomes Lord Crichton, the imperial family will not interfere. The main character cannot predict for sure. Suddenly, the relationship between Credo and the Emperor will improve, thanks to the return of her mother. The House of Credo is plunging into terrible danger due to the pressure of his great-uncle, and the Emperor and the royal family come to the rescue. This would be the worst-case scenario for Daniel. Mirabelle believes that he was not mistaken if it was for this reason that he intercepted his mother's letters. However, now my mother has returned home safely and has already spoken with the Emperor. The girl hopes that this thought will haunt Daniel at night. The heroine understands that he is not one of those who will sit idly by. He can get rid of the two of them under the pretext of goodwill. For Belle, this is all disgusting. She would have hit Daniel then if Elliot hadn't stood up for her. At one point, the young lady heard her maids outside the door, who notified her that her food was ready. The girl allowed me to enter. A nice girl entered the room, greeted her, and introduced herself as Kalina Clovette, but allows Mirabelle to simply call her Kalina. The main character politely greeted her, calling her by her full name, but she again reminded her that she could call her not so formally. Kalina then introduced the lady to her personal maid named Anita Leopel. Anita said in confusion that she was honored to serve Mirabelle. Kalina said that she would also be with the lady, but Anita would still be her main maid. Belle thought the new subordinate was nice and said she was glad to meet her. After a while, when the main character was walking along the corridor, Uncle Brian called out to her and asked if she was heading to the dining room. The man praised the girl for accompanying her mother to the imperial castle, after which he asked if anything had happened to her there. Mirabelle did not understand the question and clarified what he meant, to which Brian shyly asked her to forget about what he was trying to ask. The uncle shyly covered his face with his fist and asked if he could accompany her to the dining room. The young lady is amazed that a man who has destroyed many demons has difficulty talking to a little girl like her. Brian took his niece's silence as a refusal, so he sadly said that she didn't need to force herself, but she cheerfully grabbed his hand and agreed. They were simply walking along the corridor together, when suddenly the heroine noticed that the Crown Duke was welling up with tears. Belle asked what happened, and he, picking up a handkerchief, said that he was very glad that he had such a wonderful niece. The girl is glad to know that after so many years of struggling alone, she now has a reliable family. Continuing the walk, holding hands with her uncle, everything seems even more beautiful to the main character than she ever could have imagined. Brian asked his niece to tell her about who she met in the imperial palace, and she said that she met the emperor himself, who wanted to talk to her mother alone. Mirabel adds that she met the prince and Empress, who said that she and Cornelia were good friends. The girl asked if it was true. The man says that this is the honest truth, and Marianne was more shocked than anyone else when she learned about the disappearance of her friend and her lover. The heroine understands that her mother was dear to the Empress, and Brian expresses regret to Marianne because she suffered a lot because of them. Then the uncle, mysteriously putting his finger to his face, asked his niece whether the prince had been rude to her and whether he had offended her. Mirabel remembers that Adrian himself plopped down on the floor and blamed her for it, and then sulked. But the heroine decides to let him get away with it, because after all, he is a good son. She tells her uncle that nothing like that happened, which surprises him. Brian is relieved by this, but asks Belle to let him know if the prince disrespects her, since he happens to be his fencing coach. When the man said that he would take revenge on Adrian for her, the young lady's imagination immediately flashed to Brian villainously forcing the prince to train. The girl was scared of this, and Brian adds that it could be not only Adrian, but also her other offenders. She just needs to let him know about it. Suddenly, the main character, as if with a snap of a finger, remembered that she really needed help now. Mirabel makes an unusual request to Brian. She asks him to train her in swordsmanship, based on the fact that her skills as a mercenary were simply instinctive, habitual methods of survival. She thinks that if she learns from a skilled swordsman like Brian, she will be able to reach the heights and maybe destroy all of Daniel's people. Uncle says that wielding a sword is a difficult art, and it will be more difficult for her than it seems. He asks if she is sure of her desire. He warns that although he is her uncle, he will not feel sorry for her during training. Mirabel says with great confidence that everything is fine. With shining eyes full of perseverance and determination, the girl says that even despite this, she wants to study. Brian accepts her request and announces that her classes start at dawn tomorrow. The man says that she can stop her teaching at any time by simply telling him, but Belle is determined that she will never do that. When the uncle and niece arrived in the dining room, they saw the Grand Duke, Cornelia, Elliot, and Daniel sitting at the table waiting for them. Brian told the girl that they seemed to be the last to arrive, to which she agreed. The Duke was delighted to finally see his granddaughter. He asked her to sit next to him, but Mirabel felt uncomfortable when she saw Daniel. The heroine was embarrassed that she sat in Brian's place of honor, although he didn't seem to mind. He boasted to his son that he held his niece's hand the whole way. The grandfather suggests that his granddaughter was tired after visiting the imperial palace, but she refutes this and says that she had a wonderful time there. The Grand Duke says that he is glad to hear this and promises the girl to take care of everything. The main character was embarrassed because her uncle said exactly the same words to her. She finds her own family to be overprotective. But Mirabel understands that she should be grateful for this, so she thanks her grandfather with a blinding smile. After this, there was an awkward silence among the family members. The girl called out to the Duke, puzzled. It turned out that the grandfather was so touched by his granddaughter that, like Brian, he shed tears. Belle assumed it was hereditary. Daniel laughed and told his brother that he couldn't suddenly change his character just because he had a granddaughter. He explains that people will be shocked to learn that the famously stoic Grand Duke Credo sheds tears. Looking angrily at the Lord, Mirabel thinks that he can charm everyone as much as he wants, but he will never deceive her. Having calmed down, His Highness asked everyone for forgiveness for his manners, after which he remembered that he must introduce Cornelia's daughter to his brother. But unexpectedly, Daniel says that they have already met. This puzzled the Duke, and he asked how this could be and whether they already knew each other. Elliot intervenes in the dialogue between the men and says that when his great-uncle arrived at the mansion, he asked Mirabel to be his guide. Daniel was alarmed by the words of the boy, who said that he asked for a child who spent only one day in the palace and barely knows how it works. The thoughtful man says that Belle was so charming that he decided to tease her in this way and asked her to accompany him. In his opinion, the girl is very smart and knew the road perfectly. The Grand Duke sternly asks his brother to be more careful because Mirabel has only been living in the palace for 2 days and could get scared and get lost. And 30 minutes later, the Duke, slightly intoxicated with wine, was already admiring how smart his granddaughter was, because she had independently reached him from Delphi. The man, with trembling in his chest, remembers how she asked for his help right in front of the mansion and told him that her mother was Cornelia. The Duke says with charm that the main character is very brave, and this means that the blood of the Crichtons flows in her veins. Daniel happily supports his brother. Mirabelle, awkwardly biting her fork, thinks that calling her brave was reckless because she is anything but. The girl felt her mother put her hand on her arm. The young lady thinks that it would be more accurate to call her decisive. It is precisely this quality that she ascribes to herself because she made an oath to herself that she would never lose her mother again. Daniel says that one day Cornelia's daughter will make an excellent Crichton, and with such nerves she will be quite suitable for the role of the main Duke of Crichton. The Grand Duke says he likes the idea, although they should get to know the girl's character better, but she does show a lot of promise. Looking at her grandfather, the main character thought that she had never seen him in such a good mood. Pensively peering into the water in the glass, Mirabelle believes that Daniel is only pretending and hiding his true evil nature. It seems to her that the Grand Duke trusts him completely, which is not surprising, because they have lived their whole lives together as a family. Suddenly, Daniel comes up with an unusual proposal. He invites his brother to organize a ball in honor of the return of Mirabelle and Cornelia to high society. Grandfather says that this is not a bad idea, but they must first find out the opinion of the girls themselves, because from now on everything will be as they wish. Cornelia says she doesn't mind at all, but she's a little worried about Mirabelle because she's a sensitive girl. The main character understands why her mother is worried. As soon as the rumor spreads that they have returned, many will congratulate them and welcome them. But there will be just as many people who will start gossiping behind their backs, and Corneille is worried that her daughter could be hurt again. Belle suggests that this may be why Daniel proposed the ball. He wants to turn her into an obedient little puppet. But the girl is sure that everything will not be the way he wants it, and she would not have survived being a mercenary if such trifles had not frightened her. The baby tells her mother that she wants to go to the ball and that she will be fine, but she doubts whether she is sure or not. The Lord intervenes in the conversation and says that Cornelia needs to give her daughter a chance, because it will be a good experience for her. The man is sure that the news of their return has already spread throughout the capital, and people will be upset if the Duke's daughter does not appear at the ball. Daniel tells his niece that these rumors do not only concern her, they can also affect Mirabelle. Cornelia agrees with her uncle. The great-uncle drank contentedly from a glass of water when Cornelia told her father that the idea of holding a ball was good for both her and her daughter. His Highness says this is very good. He promises to tell the servants to prepare a flawless ball for the two of them. Looking at Daniel, the main character thinks that even though she knows that this is a trap, it is not easy for her to go for it. She believes that Daniel should not let his guard down either, because she swears to herself that everything will not be the same as last time, because now she sees right through her enemy. After some time, Anita, helping the lady get ready, tells her that she is probably excited, since there are 2 weeks left before the grand ball. But Mirabelle says she's not too worried about it. The servant praises her training outfit, and she says that she will be given a real one later. The maid then reveals that she is upset that she did not help the young lady get dressed, but Belle tells her that she can handle it herself. Anita says that the Grand Duke himself is overseeing the organization of this event. He says that the ball should be unsurpassed and colorful. According to the Duke, this was supposed to feed all the poor and all people should enjoy it. The girl says that she is very sorry that all the employees have been busy with preparations for the ball since the morning, but the servant said that this is their job. Mirabelle tells Anita that she shouldn't have gotten up so early to help her get ready for training, but the girl said that she should always be there. Finally, the ladies arrived at the training room, where they immediately saw Brian with his son. The main character is inspired by the fact that she will learn from Brian Crichton himself, and is confident that she will become even better after his training. And as a nice touch, after she spends enough time with these two, she can tell for sure whether they are allies or enemies. If they are allies, then she can ask them for some help. Elliot greeted his friend, and she also greeted him with a warm greeting, elbowing the maid. Brian also greeted the girl and asked if she was feeling tired. She said no, and she was fine. The teacher warned Belle not to overdo it. Since today is the first day of her classes, the man decides to start with a warm-up. As he stretches his arms, he says stretching is the most important part of training and helps prevent unnecessary injuries, so you should always stretch. Uncle suggests that it will be even better if she warms up after training. He tells the student that from now on she must stretch every day before and after training. Approaching the end of the warm-up, the man said that stretching causes a cheerful surge of strength, which the children agreed with. Brian then says he has to test her stamina and asks Elliot to join her. The boy suggests that they should run a circle. The main character accepts the task and, after the command, begins to run with her friend. But before she had even run half the circle, she felt that she had lost her physical form, which she was not very surprised about. Elliot asked Mirabelle if she was okay, to which she said that she was fine. In response, the boy cockily shouted to her that she could take her time and they would see each other later. But Belle accepted his challenge with a sly smile, for which teacher Brian praised her. Having completed the task, the girl stopped to catch her breath. The uncle asked if she felt bad, to which she replied that no. Elliot praised his friend. The man says she was fast for a newbie, but they still have a lot of work to do. He adds that they will start fencing when she is strong enough, to which Belle says that she will work on it. After this, Brian, making a terrifying grimace on his face, asked the student if she was ready to cope with everything. The little girl, who doesn't even seem scared by this, bravely says she's ready. He rejoices at this, after which he invites the students to start doing squats. Then the main character realized that Brian was not joking at all at that moment when he said that he would not feel sorry for her during training. When the training was over, the maid Anita saw her mistress sitting on the floor. She tried hard to normalize her breathing, which had become labored due to fatigue. The girl offered Mirabelle a pillow to sit comfortably on, but she politely refused, saying that everything was fine with her. But, noticing the displeased face of her teacher, the young lady immediately rose to her feet because she needed to stand while she had the strength. Brian says that from now on they will repeat these exercises every morning to improve her stamina, and he thinks it will be difficult for her. The girl realizes that learning fencing requires basic stamina. In addition, her uncle spends time and effort training her personally. Belle understands that she can't let him down, so she tells him not to worry about her, because she will cope no matter what. She bowed her head low and thanked the man for the lesson, which surprised him very much. Brian Creighton smiled, patted the student on the head, and said that she had done well today.